ISIS, and this is where the love jihad element comes into play. A lot of many Christian women, right, of lower classes, lower sections, they converted. Some of them converted to Islam, went to Afghanistan, went to Syria. Not just Hindu women. Christian women also have fallen prey to it, which is why the church is very much going on
aware of this. And
they take very active role. Vocal about it. The Christian and Muslim community that always used to cooperate with each other, always used to have cordial relations with each other, it's very much gone for a toss. And there are multiple reasons for it. And this actually traces its origin to a very unfortunate incident that happened almost more than a decade back, when a professor's hand was cut off by PFI activists. The Christian church has been very much aware of the role that outsized role of the Muslim community and its influence, especially since the Gulf boom happened, its economic strength and heft has increased. And the Christian community for so long dominated the state economically. They were merchants, they were traders, especially in South Central Kerala. They were very much the dominant class, right? After Babri Masjid, right? There was a lot of Muslim insecurity, right? That Muslim insecurity or Muslim communal sentiment or insecurity has been exploited by creating these sort of radical organizations like PFI. In PFI rallies, the most explicit thing that has happened is that a kid chanted death to Hindus and death to Christians.
Okay.
So things like that have happened. PFI is an explicitly Islamist organization. There's no doubt about it. So many discourse in Kerala about that being named Shiv Shakti. I mean, missiles are named Agni, Shaurya, Trishul, Brahmos. I mean, if you start, the Supreme Court's slogan is Yado Dharma Tado Jaya, right? Right? Are there not explicit calls to references to the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and entire...
Yeah.
They are opposed to all that, right? And this Shiv Shakti point was a point of discussion for 2 days, I think, in Malayalam media.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, it was. And they were like, why is one group being promoted over the other? This is anti-scientific. This is anti-scientific temper. This is, this is a regressive policy, etc., etc.
Implant these scenes in Malayali movies.
Yes.
Out of context, just randomly they're putting, these lead actors and actresses and showing them eating beef.
Yes.
With no context, no background whatsoever. So why this obsession?
No, the context and background is that parota and beef you're supposed to eat, right? That is the Malayali dish. Christians used to eat beef, and this beef has become a proxy for you becoming secular. Hindus have a lack of awareness about cow and what it means in the Hindu religion, Hindu scripture, what it meant. And this is a reality, right? Hindus are unaware about history. In 1921, when the Muslims rioted, when the Khilafat movement and all that happened in Kerala, Mapla riot happened, when that rebellion happened, what did they do? They slaughtered the holy cows in temples, and they took the entrails and cast it onto deities to desecrate the temples. Force-fed Hindus beef to make them to show them of their religion.
Yeah.
That cultural realization, that identification in their head, that this is the reality, this is what happened, is not there.
Okay, welcome back, Anand bhai.
Namaskar.
Namaskaram.
You've become a Malayali now.
I mean, in Kashmir also we say namaskar. Namaskar.
Oh.
I mean, we don't say namaskaram, but namaskar is what we say. Okay. We don't say namaste in Kashmir. We say namaskaram. No, not namaskaram. Namaskar. Let's begin our conversation.
Yeah.
So, there's been talk of one nation, one election.
Yeah.
What is your perspective on that? And here comes my dog to pat him.
Hi.
Chalo. Good. Nico, chalo, go back. We'll keep this much and then we'll edit you out. Chalo, bye. Chal, theek hai, baith jaye yahin pe. Chal. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, so this idea about one nation, one election, right? Or simultaneous elections, right? That's how the other way to phrase it. So this is something that's been talked about on and off. Obviously, after 2014, the Prime Minister himself has explicitly started talking about it in various fora. It's been in and out of public discourse, right? It's never really acquired this status that is acquired now, where a committee is being set up under former President Ramnath Kovind. It's a very positive step. So one nation, one election, the whole idea is that when we initially started out with the elections in 51-52, right, all the state assembly elections happened parallelly.
Yeah.
With 51-52.
With the Lok Sabha.
With the Lok Sabha elections. Along with that happened, once that term of the first Lok Sabha expired, 57 also happened the same way. 62 also happened more or
For
less.
all the states?
Almost all the states.
Almost all the states.
So there's a very interesting discussion paper that Dr. Bibek Dabroy did along with, I think, one of his associates, Kishore Desai,
Okay.
I think, for Niti Aayog, a discussion paper. It's a very interesting paper to read through about this history, about how one nation, one election, or the simultaneous elections came about. That's a very interesting read. So it talks about how it was supposed to be go in parallel, right? Because if Lok Sabha obviously is 5-year term, state assembly elections also 5-year term, right? But obviously, due to various reasons, chief ministers resigning, governments falling, whatever else, at various times, there was divergences between how state assembly elections and when state assembly elections and when the general elections are conducted.
So initially, it was intended to be like this only,
yes,
right?
it was intended to be like this, but when the general elections happened in 51-52, obviously the design was such that it'll happen in parallel, right? That was the thinking process. But our constitution, when it was designed, it didn't factor in the fact that this elections can be called in between and stuff like that, and that divergence happened. And once that divergence happened, and it's never been the same, right? But we have elections all the time, right? We are in perpetual campaign mode. The Prime Minister, or Rahul Gandhi, or all these national leaders, all of them have to go on campaign ever so often, and it's harder when the Prime Minister is going on campaign all the time, right? Because he is one way or the other, whoever it be, he's considered the leader of that ruling group, and the ruling group most probably has a pan-national presence. They have elections in Kerala in 21. You have elections in Goa. You have elections in every year. There's at least one legislative assembly election, right? And this perpetual campaigning is a pain, not just with respect to the spend that we have to do every single time, but also it is a pain because model code of conduct restricts the government's ability to do a lot of things, right? So that is one major pain point. The other major pain point is these constant elections are a big fiscal and administrative burden for the state, right? Because you have to mobilize so much of your personnel to do this. Not that you shouldn't, of course you should, but doing it perpetually ever so often is a real pain point, right? So there are very real reasons for why we would need polls to be simultaneous as much as possible. And US, for example, has that sort of system. India there's a very real benefits from India having that sort of system, right? It's going to take some time. I think it's going to take some time and effort for us to come to a mechanism that works for us, because the problem is that if a government falls in between, right, whether it be a center or state government falls in between, what do we do then? One of the solutions that has been proposed in Bibek Dabroy's paper, for example, is that we have a positive confidence of motion. So if a non-confidence motion is moved, then it's not just necessary to bring down the current government, but you also need to propose somebody who's going to replace it.
Without elections.
Yeah, without elections, within the same Lok Sabha. If you're not unable to replace it, then okay, fine, you'll do elections, but only for the remaining period, whatever remaining period that house has.
Okay.
So that elections happen in these 5-year cycles.
The chain doesn't break, basically.
Yes. What happens in the US, for example, if Joe Biden resigns today, Kamala Harris automatically becomes vice president, president, right? So that sort of system or similar systems can be imagined. The problem is that we have a parliamentary democracy, right? So even though the prime minister is, we've not moved to that presidential style of democracy, which allows for this sort of simultaneous elections, we really do need to work out a solution for issues when the government falls, right? So that is a very real problem. I think it'll take time and effort. It doesn't have a lot of political consensus right now. It has consensus within the NDA for.
But they have formed a panel, right?
Yes, they founded a committee. They formed a committee. And then the committee will have to discuss with all national political parties, regional political parties, every section of society to really come to a workable solution to this. Because this entails a big constitutional change, right? It entails amending the constitution in multiple articles of the constitution, changing the structure of the state legislative assemblies and the parliament itself. It's not an easy ask at all. It's a very monumental task, but it's worth it, right? I think it's worth it. It's a necessary change that I think would benefit the country overall. But obviously a workable solution has to be there for not just for when, say members resign or members retire or members die or whatever reason, but also when governments fall, right? Governments can fall all the time. So that sort of solution, if it exists, would be great to, work it out, so to speak.
Yeah, got it. Makes sense. All right, man. I think that is for that. And moving to the next topic that we had in mind, the religion aspect of Kerala. I think we've covered the political aspects and the political intricacies in Kerala and what it entails, basically. But let's touch upon the religious elements now. So we did talk about the Hindu, Christian, and Muslim castes and class divide that is, prevalent or was prevalent, and now it's kind of changed over time or not. So let's deep dive into that as well. So
Hindus, so as I said, Hindus, Iravas and Tiyas and Nayars are one group, two different groups. They are the dominant groups. Now coming to Muslims and Christians, now this is a very important transformation that has happened in the past 4 or 5 years, which is that the Christian and Muslim community that always used to cooperate with each other, always used to have cordial relations with each other, it's very much gone for a toss. And there are multiple reasons for it. And this actually traces this origin to a very unfortunate incident that happened almost more than a decade back, when a professor's hand was cut off by PFI activists.
TJ
Joseph.
Yeah.
So Newman College to Dubra, his hand was cut off for allegedly blasphemous comments that he made.
By Islamists?
By PFI activists.
Okay.
By Islamists, by PFI. So that is when we had this very big shocker that, this element of Islamism is so prevalent, this idea about blasphemy and how it, it is such a violent event. So violent repercussion or violent avengement of a blasphemy can be done in Kerala, right? Generally, we like to think of ourselves as a peaceful society, no communal issues. That's how the Communist Party also does its propaganda. Congress also does its propaganda, that Kerala is the ocean of resistance against communalism, right? So this sort of communal incident kind of shocked the conscience of Malayalis. So that is...
Christians included.
Yes, of course. Christians were very much shocked. It was a Christian.
Because he was a victim of the Christian, right?
He was a victim of Islam.
I think was that the inception of the Christian and Muslim divide in Kerala? Because, we... all the time we hear the stories that the phrase "love jihad" was coined by Christians.
Yes,
brought in by the judge. The church.
The church newspaper Deepika is the first one that started talking about this love jihad issue. They introduced this love jihad issue, and they still actively talk about it, by the way. So this element, the Christian church has been very much aware of the role that outsized role of the Muslim community and its influence, especially since the Gulf boom happened, its economic strength and heft has increased, and the Christian community for so long dominated the state economically. They were merchants, they were traders, especially in South Central Kerala. They were very much the dominant class, right? And they still are in many ways. The Muslims are trying to break into that. Members of the Muslim community are breaking into that. So they very much feel insecure, right? They've been feeling more and more insecure because of the amount of money that is flowing into the state, and how much the supposed Christian commercial interests are harmed by Muslim commercial entities, right?
This Gulf money that comes in, it's basically Muslims working outside, and then they
send back money,
the money,
or they come back and they invest in commercial entities.
But it's through and through Muslims only that bring in the Gulf money, or there's some
more Muslims than Christians or Hindus.
Okay.
So in fact, if you look at the Kerala Migration Surveys, a study that the Kerala government institutions do, from the since the 90s till the 2010s, it was mostly Muslim youth who were going. There were an element of there was a good amount of Hindus, a good amount of Christians, but mostly Muslim youth who were going to Gulf, earning money and coming back or sending money back. From 2010, there's this Hinduization where more Hindu men are also going.
Okay.
But the Muslim community has been thoroughly enriched by the Gulf boom, right? So these are millennia-old connections that the community has, by the way. It's not something that came up since the 60s or 70s. It's a millennia-old connections. They were traders, they were merchants. That's how Islam got introduced into the state itself. So these connections meant that they very much benefited from what happened in the Gulf oil boom, right? They very much benefited from that. And that money has changed the dynamics of the state. So this is led to an inferiority and an insecurity within the Christian community. And this has only increased over time as the Muslims have started gaining political power. So if you look at the political divergence between the Christian and Muslim community, it traces its origin to the 2011-2016 government. Uman Chandi, it was the last Congress government under Uman Chandi, and there was this controversy over the 5th Muslim League minister. So Muslim League was traditionally given 4 ministers. So Kerala has this very interesting quota system when the UDF rules. They know the chief minister is this community, this person has to be a Nair, this person has to be Edava, this person has to be that. So traditionally the Muslim League used to be given 4 ministers. Okay. And when they used to be given 4 ministers, but that was a traditional system. But in 2011-16, they wanted the 5th minister. Okay. And that became a huge point of contention because the Christian community was not inclined to, the church was not happy with that idea. And when we say the church, so there's the Catholics, there's the Orthodox Jacobites, and then there's other groups as well. So that's church is not one single entity.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's not think about it like that. But broadly speaking, the Christians were not happy about the Muslim League getting one more Muslim minister, right? So that led to a huge controversy. Eventually, they got their minister, but a sort of break happened between the Christian community and Muslim community's political agreement to keep the communists out, right? Conservative elements of the Muslims and the Christians, they both, I think there was a break there from that point on. And it's only increased over time because the Islamists have gained, PFI was very successful, SDPI had its root, Jamaat-e Islami became very successful, the Communist Party increasingly started pandering to Islamists. So the Christian community very much felt insecure. So, and global events also play a role. For example, when Turkey, Erdogan transformed Hagia Sophia from a museum to a mosque. That was a point of that Christian community actively picked it up in Kerala, and they were social media was abuzz about how Muslims were celebrating the fact that it became a mosque, and Christians were against. Oh my God, secularization is going. Turkey, they're bringing in back Islamism and stuff like that. It's an actual point. There's an actual break between the Christian Muslim community over global issues as well, and ISIS. And this is where the love jihad element comes into play. A lot of many Christian women, right, of lower classes, lower sections, they converted, some of them converted to Islam, went to Afghanistan, went to Syria. Not just Hindu women. Christian women also have fallen prey to it. Which is why the church is very much, going on.
Aware of this. And
they take very active role. Vocal about it. So they are very much, feeling insecure about their status in Kerala society. Right?
Okay.
This is not a mass, this is not just a mass feeling, it's also an institutional feeling, right? But this is more social. This is not political yet. So you see the BJP trying to do this bridge between trying to bring that alliance between Hindus and Christians. They're trying to do that, but this is a social feeling. This is a feeling of social insecurity. So that feeling of insecurity is very much, the Communist Party has exploited that to an extent, right? The minorities minister for since forever has always been a Muslim. Right now it's the chief minister himself, right? Okay. Chief minister himself, he is a Hindu technically. He is the minorities affair minister, right? First time I think in my living memory that that has happened. So and very clearly they've been trying not to show that they are appeasing Islamists explicitly.
Okay.
So the Christian community, there was this 80-20 controversy where a certain scholarship, it was given 80% to Muslims and only 20% to the rest of minorities, which means Christians. So all these sort of issues started getting picked up by Christians. They have this very much within the state, they have this feeling of insecurity. And that feeling, I don't know how it will politically transform the state yet, but this is a very real sense of insecurity that the Christian community feels, and they are very much aware of how they need to align with the national, the BJP nationally speaking, which is why you will see the churches, almost all the churches, they maintain a very cordial line with the central leadership of the BJP. Not so much with the state leadership, but with the central leadership of the BJP, they maintain a very close relationship because they don't want their interests harmed.
Because nationally they know that BJP is
BJP is
taking
going-
up that mantle
Yes,
of
yes.
fighting the love jihad thing.
Yeah,
right?
not just love jihad. They know that is the anchor against Islamist appeasement.
Yeah.
And the state leadership of the BJP is not in that political position yet.
Whether or not they are completely
Yes.
in,
Yeah, they're
inclined
not
to the
powerful,
idea.
right? They're not going to rule the state. They're probably never going to rule the state, I guess. But more importantly, the church is very aware. The institutional awareness is very much there. But obviously, the church has a lot of internal politics, right? A lot of internal politics is there. It's not like the church is one institution that's already, all of them have recognized it. But those who are following the political and social trends of the state, social cultural trends of the state, are very much aware of this problem. And any Christian who's aware of these things would not like the direction that the state is going in, right? Because it's going in a very rough path for them.
Got it. So where does PFI come into picture then?
So PFI, so Popular Front of India, right? Very interesting naming.
Yeah.
Right? They try to present themselves. This is something that I have written in a couple of places. How they present themselves as a group of people who are fighting for the constitution of the country. Right?
Okay.
That's how they project themselves. If they read through their material, if they go through what they're saying, not with respect to the social or cultural dynamics, but how they present themselves foundationally, and the SDPI itself, they present themselves as working towards fulfilling the rights of the minorities and other groups within the Constitution of India, right? And they've had leaders from the scheduled castes, etc. also in Kerala. They've played a very deft game. So where does the PFI origins lay? So PFI and its origins lay in the after 90s, after Babri Masjid, right? There was a lot of Muslim insecurity. Right, that Muslim insecurity or Muslim communal sentiment or insecurity has been exploited by creating these sort of radical organizations like PFI, who are basically use the veneer of constitutional or social rights, political rights, to basically engage in a law-scale warfare against the Sangh. Okay, they've been engaged. There's no two ways about it. They have actively targeted killing Sangh workers in the state of Kerala. Right?
That has happened. Like there's a tussle between the Sangh and PFI.
It was until they were banned, until PFI was banned. Multiple
But
instances.
what does banning really mean? Like, are they not allowed to gather, or are
No,
they
they're not allowed to gather. The NIA is basically
Their
arrested.
headquarters is locked
Their
up.
headquarters is seized. Most of their leadership is arrested. Of course, it might re-emerge in some other form. But PFI as its organization, what they've tried to do is after 2014, they grew massively because they presented themselves as getting stuff done. Right?
Were they colluding with the forces, so to speak, that were, recruiting for ISI?
There's very real elements of PFI workers who are connected, who have become ISI terrorists. Okay, there are PFI actives. So this is this possible deniability that PFI has, is that they've done a very deft game where they've tried to project themselves as the leaders of the protecting the constitution, protecting the people's rights, etc. But they are Islamists, right? And they're.
But why doesn't the Kerala people, like the Kerala so-called intellectual people,
they're scared.
Look through it? Because
scared.
they are marching on in these rallies and they're
calling for Hindus to die, Christians to die.
slaughtering cow and stuff like that, and then they're
cow
waving.
is a different issue. Let's not go there.
But then the way they're waving these flags, and
yes,
there's a clear divide. So why can't the common Keralite see through that? And
so the green flag or whatever, that doesn't have that negative association that many people might have, right? Because the Muslim League is an accepted political party. Okay, it's in the state. So that flag thing might not be a big deal. It's not a big deal within the state, right? I'm used to it.
But then weren't they waving ISIS flags as well in between?
No, there have been instances of that, right? I'm not saying there haven't been, but not in PFI rallies. The most explicit thing that has happened is that a kid chanted death to Hindus and death to Christians.
Okay.
So things like that have happened. PFI is an explicitly Islamist organization. There's no doubt about it. And no doubt that it should have been banned. But what I'm trying to say is that they maintained an element of deniability in many of these respects, and they use the discourse around fighting Hindu communalism, fighting against the BJP, fighting against the radicalism of the Hindus, etc., as points to disguise their violence, points to disguise what their actual true intentions are. And the truth is that Malayali intellectuals are scared to speak truth to power, right? Whether it be against the Communist Party or whether it be against Islamists, they are scared to point out the intention of these groups of people. There are very few people that have. I'm not saying that there aren't intellectuals who haven't, but they are unwilling to critically analyze these groups of people because it points to the fundamental failure of these groups, to fundamental failure of these intellectuals to question where these people originate from. They only care about the fact that they are fighting. They are fighting against BJP. They are fighting against RSS, right? So they do not. They are scared. They're not unwilling to apply that critical lens to these groups of people, right? So the point I'm trying to make with respect to PFI, right? What they've done is that they use these ideas, these discourses to protect themselves, to shield themselves from scrutiny. And they've been very effective. And that is the actual failure of the Kerala, people of Kerala, or the Muslim community within Kerala. That's their failure. That they have failed to question what PFI's intentions are. Knowingly or unknowingly, they've let that fester, they've let that feeling grow. They've not accepted the reality of where the country is going, what the reality of the country is. They don't want to, for example, the Shiv Shakti point, right? So many debates, discourse in Kerala about that being named Shiv Shakti. I mean, missiles are named Agni, Shaurya, Trishul, BrahMos. I mean, if you start, the Supreme Court slogan is Yado Dharma Tado Jaya, right? Right? Are there not explicit calls to references to the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and entire? They are opposed to all that, right? And this Shiv Shakti point was a point of discussion for 2 days, I think, in Malayalam media.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it was. And they were like, why is one group being promoted over the other? This is anti-scientific. This is anti-scientific temper. This is, this is a regressive policy, etc., etc. Kerala public discourse is at such an utter disgraceful state. Miserable level. Where they're unable to divide between what is scientific and what is temporal, right? Or what is the difference between a nation naming, whether you like it or not, whether or not it has religious connotations, it has a greater meaning to it.
Yeah.
Right? It is not just religious in nature, it has greater meaning to it too. I'm not for secularization of anything, but Shiva, I'm not secularizing Shiva, let me be very clear.
Yeah.
But
then it comes with a
cultural representation.
multitude of reasons and
yes.
meanings, right?
Yes.
So you can pick and choose from whatever relates to you or your ideology, and then live peacefully with it. I mean, deal with it.
Yeah, you have to deal with it. Right? This is the problem with Malayalis. They're not unable to deal with the Malayalis are unable, even Hindus are unable to, they are apologetic about the fact that they live in a Hindu majority country. Right? That is the ultimate reality. They are very much reluctant to realize that when you're living in when 80 to 75 to 80% of a nation is one group, that group's elements, whether you like it or not, its cultural history, whether
will
it's
take precedence
over the other groups.
Naturally.
There's no equanimity, right? You cannot name it point A. You cannot name where Chandrayaan 3 landed point A or Nehru Point, right? I mean, Nehru Point they would have been more accepting of, by the way, I think, rather than Shiv Shakti Point. But point I'm trying to make is that you live in a society where the majority of the people are one group.
Public discourse is so
out. This is where I'm saying they're out of touch.
Yeah.
They're not having real discussions on the real issues. They're stuck in this scientific temper, scientific discourse, as if there's a contradiction between naming it Shiv Shakti Point and the scientific rationale behind the investigations that we're doing. Is there any link? There isn't. We can clearly distinguish between the two.
At least they're not debating on the point that what is even the point of going to
at least they're not doing that. Like some podcasters did.
Yeah. Oh God. Anyway.
Let's not go into that, right?
Anyway, moving on. What else do we need to talk about? Yeah, Gulf. I just wanted you to,
Actually, on the beef point, I think we should discuss that, right?
Yeah.
Beef.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to talk about the Gulf. I wanted to elaborate on that part as
Okay.
well. The Gulf money
money
that is coming in. Briefly, if you can touch upon that, and then we'll move on to the obsession with beef.
So Gulf money since the 2000s, and this is a very interesting political resolution. Again, I don't want to go back to politics, but CPM passed a very interesting resolution after they lost the 2001 elections. They passed a very interesting political resolution that talked about how the Muslim community has been not been part of the Communist Party's plan, and they talk about how a lot of Muslim men. Muslims have come back from Gulf. They've resettled, and they're finding at odds with the Congress, but the Communist Party has not been able to attract them. So what has happened is that this group of people who went to the Gulf came back, became rich, and came back. They dominate the Communist Party in the north of Kerala. Okay, and what has happened is that this Gulf money, they've completely changed the economic realities of the state, right? So this means that a lot of Muslim cultural events, cultural institutions, all of them have acquired grand amounts of funding, right? And this completely changed this. I'm just talking about reality here. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. That's up for the viewer to decide, whatever the consequences are. But it's completely changed the dynamics of the state, right? So one group who's dominant for so long, or one group's people who was dominant for so long, is completely changed and replaced by another group, right? And this group has its own elements, own intentions, own ideas. So that completely changes the way that the political economy and the other parts of the country, other parts of the state work, right? So that completely changes the dynamics of social relations as well. And this is where the Christian unease also increases. This is where the Hindu unease also increases. So the increasing support, the increasing funding for these elements have changed the dynamics of the state in multiple ways. So there are funding for PFI, or funding for institutions there's an institution called Satya Sarani, okay, which is a conversion institution in Manjeri. Okay, it's called Satya Sarani. Rather Sanskritic name, by the way. But it's a Muslim cultural institution that is actively intent on converting poor Christians and Hindus, especially Christians. Okay. So they've been funded by these groups of people. I'll just give you a random example that happened. This is one of the consequences of how much you play into the Islamist hands, right? There's this self-help group called Kudumbashree, very successful project that the Kerala state government has implemented of women's self-help groups. They did this pledge slogan campaign where they were pledging that we will give our daughters and sons equal share in the property. Okay, this pledge, acceptable to you, acceptable to me, acceptable probably to almost I hope every citizen in this country. Kudumbashree had to stop it within 1 or 2 weeks because Muslim clerics objected to it, saying that this is against Sharia.
Oh.
You're not supposed to say that. You cannot give daughters an equal share in your property.
Oh yeah, that is against Sharia.
Against Sharia. And there was this advocate who married, there was this actor called Advocate Shukur. Okay, he's an actor and an advocate. He had no sons. Okay, so he wanted to ensure that his daughters get an equal share in his property. It would have gone half to his brother and only rest to his daughter or something. So under Sharia. So he decided to re-register his marriages under Special Marriages Act to ensure that equal this thing is given. So many Islamists, so many people attacked him for it, for going against Sharia. So much so that he was asked, are you a Sanghi? And he had to condone the Sangh and say, I'm not a Hindu communalist, Modi ji is bad, blah, blah, blah. And there is this very famous political analyst called Advocate Jaishankar. He's a CPI, not CPM, CPI guy. He criticizes Islamists. Okay, he goes against Islamists. He goes against the pro-Islamist sentiment as a CPM. He's very much against that. He's a secularist. Okay, he is not a Sanghi. He's a secularist. He's a CPI communist guy, no doubt, end to end. But he has been accused of being a Sanghi because he criticizes the Islamists so much. Yeah. That is where the discourse is. The discourse is so slanted towards that thinking that even if that's a problem, that's a fundamental problem in Kerala society, socially speaking. If you speak for Hindu causes, if you say...
You're labelled.
You are labelled instantly as a Sanghi. I am not a BJP member. I support the Prime Minister, fine. Whatever, like that is there. I support the Prime Minister, whatever is there to do. I agree with some of the things. I am not a Karyakarta. I don't have any political this thing of my own. But if the moment I open my mouth, I am labeled a Sanghi. If I speak to any Hindu cause, I am labeled a Sanghi. If I speak against Lord Ganesha being called a myth, I am called a Sanghi. There's a very recent controversy that happened with Lord Ganesha being called a myth by Speaker A.N. Shamsher. Okay. CPM member, CPM lead, erstwhile CPM leader, and now Speaker, he called Lord Ganesha a myth while talking about scientific temper. Okay. Obviously, there was a lot of backlash against it. But if you speak against it, you are labeled a Sanghi.
Yeah.
That is the utter state in which discourses. You cannot speak up to Hindu causes. You cannot speak up to representing Hindu socially, culturally, or Hindu causes in any fashion.
Denunciation by
Complete
association.
Denunciation. Complete denunciation by association.
Yeah, makes sense. So where does the element of beef come into play? As in, why is Kerala so obsessed? Because in one of your podcasts only, I heard you saying that they've, implant these scenes in Malayali movies.
Yes.
Out of context, just randomly they're putting, these lead actors and actresses and showing them eating beef.
Yes.
With no context, no background whatsoever. So why this obsession?
No, the context and background is that paratha and beef you're supposed to eat. Right? That is the Malayali dish. Okay. You should remember that until the Travancore state joined Travancore Cochin Kingdom, until it joined the Indian Union, cattle slaughter was a offense punishable by death, I think, in Travancore Cochin. Okay. And now this entire discourse is shifted. You have to be, if you're Malayali, you have to eat paratha and
This
beef.
was when? Sorry.
Till 1947.
1947, it was punishable by death if you slaughter cows. In Travancore.
Travancore Cochin, yeah.
Then it was still under the princely...
under the king, under the Maharaja
then
of Travancore.
Obviously it would have...
It was.
Yeah.
But no, it's considered as it's a legacy of Malayalis apparently to eat paratha and beef. It's not something that... It is very clearly that something started after the 80s. Okay. If you go through the history of culinary, this thing is something that started after the 80s. But we are...
Intentionally? Was it?
Intentionally or unintentionally, as a result of... Christians used to eat beef. Okay. And Christians used to eat beef, and this beef has become a proxy for you becoming secular. So if you eat beef, you're secular. Hindus have been taught that. Hindus don't believe that the same sort of animus that a Hindu elsewhere in the country might feel towards eating beef. Hindu Malayalis have been shorn of that. Excuse me. Hindu Malayalis have completely been shorn of that because they've been told and they've been taught, they've been understood that beef eating is a normal cause of a Malayali's life.
Okay.
So what happened is that
Even Hindus.
A lot of Hindus eat beef.
Yeah.
So beef and movies, there's a very interesting how, if you go into it, culturally beef in the past 10 years has become this proxy for Malayaliness. And this is a very clear thing that scriptwriters, movie industry is doing. Right? It is a knowing trend because Malayalis have latched onto this cultural meme that beef is an element of Malayaliness.
So they're not doing it out of spite for the rest of
There is a spite element. Okay, Islamists actively encourage it. Communists actively encourage it because it means that you are desecrating something that is very holy.
To Hindus, but then again, Hindus are eating it. So what
because
is
that Hindus have lost that connection, right? Hindus have lost that connection between man and animal, right? If you see, I never grew up with a cow in my house. Okay, a cow for me is as foreign an animal as any other
a dog or
any other thing. In fact, you're closer to a dog.
Yeah.
Like more Malayalis would be outraged by dog eating than beef eating. Why? Because dogs, they have this thing.
This notion
that dogs are this thing, that thing. So what has happened is that because of the social and cultural changes that have economical changes that have happened, cows have become an alien this thing in many ways. And the acceptability for beef eating has increased because the minority community who eats beef are so high, right? So this animus and this sanction against beef eating over time has reduced over time and time again because Hindus have lost that cultural identity in head that yes, beef eating is prohibited in Hinduism, right? That element of cow being holy has diluted over time, right? There are still, I am more or less I am a pure vegetarian when in Delhi, right? I don't eat meat at all, right? There are multiple Hindu families that are pure veg in many ways. There are Hindu families that don't eat beef also, but an average Hindu Malayali in Kerala would eat beef or has eaten beef.
Is it the elite Hindus?
Both, all classes, both elite, both lower classes, every group. Because you've been told and taught that beef eating is not a wrong thing.
In schools?
No, it's not. There's no sanction against it. You're not going to religious classes. You're not being taught by your parents that beef eating is a bad thing.
Socially, it's
become acceptable. It's super acceptable. It's promoted socially, which is why you see in movies that you see, beef eating as a meme. In this movie there's movies in which Tambram, there's a very famous movie that got released some time back.
But when you say promoted, that itself means that it has some sort of a out of spite element, right?
Yeah, there is an out of spite element. No doubt.
And the out of spite would obviously be for Christians or Muslims doing it out of spite of the Hindus.
Yes.
But then if majority of Hindus are eating it,
yeah,
then what is the out of spite, or what is the propaganda even?
Because you're differentiating yourself from the rest of the country.
So it's more of out of spite to show the rest of the country.
Yes, rest of the country also.
North Indians
have this cow, mutra, whatever else. You do that, all that stuff. We are not that. We are very progressive. We are very elite. We don't have such inclinations. We eat beef. It has become an element of Malayali pride that way. It is not, and people like me exist. I don't eat beef.
Only if they could understand that North Indians don't even
care.
Don't even care, first of all, and then secondly,
you're only damaging your own credibility, right? Because very honestly, the idea about Kerala has also changed. Very fortunately, unfortunately, there are very wrong things that are perpetuated about Kerala on Twitter, right? No doubt, and a lot of people have very bad ideas. Some sort of hellhole is there. No, it's a fine state. Okay? It runs fine enough, but the problem is that when you create such a divergence, there are two issues. The state itself doesn't realize where it's going, and then there are a group of people outside the state who think that this is some sort of hellhole. Two problems exist at the same time, and it's reality that both exist. Problem is that when you hinge on something like beef eating, what is the point, man? There's no. How is that culture? Right? That's how Malayalis are viewing it now. I don't understand. I don't even if you want to take a completely deracinated opinion and think accept beef as any other meat and eat. It's just a meat, right? It's just as meat as anything else. So this obsession with beef eating is a proxy for their own insecurity about being in India, is what I feel. The truth of the reality is that whether whoever it be, beef eating is normal, right? It's shocking to everyone else from North Indians and many people from outside of the state. But beef eating is very normalized. It's promoted, and it's partly out of spite, partly out of cultural acceptance and a lack of awareness. Hindus have a lack of awareness about cow and what it means in the Hindu religion, Hindu scripture, what it meant. And this is a reality, right? Hindus are unaware about history. In 1921, when the Muslims rioted, when the Khilafat movement and all that happened in Kerala, Mapla riot happened, and that rebellion happened, what did they do? They slaughtered the holy cows in temples, and they took the entrails and cast it onto deities to desecrate the temples. Force-fed Hindus beef to make them to show them of their religion.
Yeah,
that cultural realization, that identification in their head, that this is the reality, this is what happened, is not there.
But where do they lose the plot? Because
you're not
in your 1920s and 1940s is very recent, right?
Yes,
it's recent history. It's not like some ancient history.
Yes.
So what happened in between? What cultural or
see, Hindus were always only 60%, right? Christians and Muslims were always there. Right? That was there. And when the communist government came into power, these sort of issues, they never took up. Neither the communists nor the Congress. For obvious reasons, they never talked about this history. And the institutions of Hindu religion or the Hindu religious establishment that should have protected these elements they compromise themselves again and again for political power.
Okay.
And they never really understood which path the state is. It's a failure of the Hindu elites. It's the failure of the Hindu community to realize which path the state has gone down under from the 60s, 70s, 80s onwards. You don't learn about these incidents. I learned about this incident, about what happened during the Mappila rebellion, by my own research when I turned 18 or 19. I didn't learn about it in school. In school, it was presented as an independence movement. It was not independence from the British. It was independence from Hindus.
Okay.
They wanted to establish a caliphate. They proclaimed, one of those guys proclaimed themselves a caliph. What does a caliph mean, man?
Killer of kafirs.
Yes. And not just that, like, it's an Islamic leader, right?
Yeah.
It's not a Hindu leader. And the memory that, so a lot of Hindus in the Malabar wrote about this. British sponsored people also, and otherwise also they wrote against what exactly happened during the Mappila Lehla, during the Mappila rebellion. But that's not been taught. No, that's not been read. That's not been understood. So this idea and this accommodative nature, right? Malayali Hindus have, that we cannot talk about these things. This congressy idea, right? You cannot talk about what's happened in the past for harming the future.
Yeah.
You have to accept the past, right? You have to accept what happened in the past. You have to accept what happened during partition. You have to accept what has happened during riots, right? You have to accept those things if you want to have a future. Talk about what Tipu did to the Nayars when Tipu Sultan invaded in the 18th century. So many topics are shorn of its actual reality and actual discussion because it is uncomfortable to talk about. And that is where society fails. And Hindu society has completely failed in transferring this in a non-school manner to their children. Right? I'm not faulting anybody here. I'm not faulting any group of people. But it's the reality is that if you do not have recognition of what's happened in the past, it will happen again in the future. Right? History might not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. As historians say, it's gonna rhyme, and it is rhyming right now. So if you need to understand what these actions mean, what these actions are meant to represent, what is this obsession with beef about, right? If you think about it very clearly in an objective fashion, you need to be able to understand and recognize it.
I think, so coming back to the initial point that we were making off camera, I think in one of your discussions with Aryan Bhai only, you said that as you know, people draw a lot of comparisons and draw a lot of parallels between Kashmir and Kerala. And you said that it might not become Kashmir.
Yeah.
It might not become, or it's far off in the future, maybe, God forbid, if that happens. I think one of the reasons for that is in Kashmir, or to sort of say that in Kashmir, at least people were aware of what was happening.
Yeah.
They were not in denial, firstly, and people knew that what is being played out through, like, at least right after the partition of India, what has been going on politically in Kashmir, people were aware of that, right? Like, when I say people, I mean the Kashmiri Hindu lot. They were aware of it, and they were in no denial at all, I think. But that is something that is missing in Kerala, that identification or acknowledgement of the fact that, we culturally or religiously we might be in danger, maybe not today because we have numbers by our side, because I think Kerala is still 50-55% Hindu population, but over time, God knows, how things might turn out. So
see, Kashmir is a very different story multiple ways, and you would know better than me. But Kashmir, shares a border with Pakistan, occupied Jammu Kashmir, and the Muslim community is predominant there, right, demographically. Kerala's Muslim community isn't predominant demographically speaking yet, but they're very dominant in society. And Hindus are and it's not similar in the sense that Kashmiri Muslims identified with the cause of Pakistan, right? And the Muslim community in Kerala, they did not. Much like in Muslims in Tamil Nadu or many other Muslims, they did not predominantly identify with the Muslim League's cause.
You're talking about
the division of the country into two.
While the division was happening.
Yeah, when partition was happening. There were elements of the Muslim community that did, no doubt. But it was not the predominant feeling. right? It was not a predominant feeling of Muslims in
But that was not the
Malappuram.
case with the Andhra Muslims.
Yeah, of course. That is a different thing because Nizam was ruling there.
Yeah.
I'm talking particularly about the Malabar Muslims, right? The Muslim League had its presence there, but and there were elements that wanted to convert Muslim dominant areas as part of Pakistan, whatnot. That was there, no doubt. But once India came into being, right? A lot of Muslim leaders were there, both in the Communist Party and the Congress as well. Muslim League was not even politically relevant in the state, did not even acquire political power in the state until the CPM gave them power in 67. So that's a political dynamic, a political history that is separate. But when we talk about what do you say, how Kashmir and Kerala work out, Kerala is a very demographically different state, and it has not gone to the situation that happened in Kashmir even in the 40s or when Pakistan invaded. It's never going to happen. Pakistan is not going to invade it because there's no land border. What Kerala is a very different situation. Kerala is a very different situation because Hindus and Christians are both feeling socially and culturally insecure about the Muslims' growing influence and growing power. Right? That is the reality. It has not reflected itself in politics yet, but it will over time reflect itself in politics. And when it starts reflecting in politics, there is going to be a huge break. Because there's a lot of latent antagonistic sentiment that builds up over years, right? And once you build it up, once this, not to sound like a liberal, but it's human reality is that if you're compromising again and again, this latent hate, whether it be from one side or the other, this latent distaste for the other side only grows.
Do you think there's a case of a bit of a Stockholm syndrome as well?
Maybe. I mean, it's more of people not being able to confront reality. They want to live peacefully. And as long as...
that is
people want to
kind of Stockholm.
Yes. I mean, people want to live peacefully. They want to continue their lives. They are not willing to look hard and long look at their mirror and say, Ki, these things are wrong. We need to change it. We need to ensure that this sort of bias, this sort of veto, this sort of, discourse that is happening in the state needs to change. It'll happen at some point. It has to break, right? It has to break at some point. And the reality of the fact is that a lot of people are aware, Hindus are aware, Christians are aware about these issues. There are people speaking up about it. I mean, you don't have to be people like me. There are people who are otherwise, who within the state who speak about it, who think about it, who talk about it. The problem is, how are you going to confront reality, right? And how are you going to deal with it? It's coming to a crescendo. I think in the next decade or so, it's inevitable that, unfortunately or fortunately, there will be outfalls of these issues coming into the state, right? And it's not going to be like Kashmir. Kerala is going to be a different case study, right? Kashmir is a different situation, different scenario. Kerala is a different case study, different scenario, different events are going to happen there. Because demographically speaking, the Muslim community is 28%. In a couple of years, they might be hit 35%, but they won't become majority until another 50 years or so, 40 years or so, right? And that's so much longer down the path, and so many things can happen in between, and so many things will happen in between because that's the reality.
Nature of politics in India.
And one more thing is that you must realize that a lot of people from outside the state come settling inside the state. Especially laborers, right? Laborers are coming from outside the state, especially from Bihar, UP, Bengalis, Muslims or Hindus or otherwise. They're all settling in the state too, right? Kerala's prime real estate.
Bihar is the solution.
Bihar is the
for
solution.
all problems India faces.
If you make Bihar a success in many ways, not just in demography, but in everything else, it would be a solution.
It in itself is a case study.
It itself is a case study.
Migration.
Yes, migration to Kerala from Bihar is, in fact, a Bihari laborer's child. She got 100 or something in Malayalam examination a couple of years back. It happens.
Achha, before we wrap up this point, I just wanted to quickly check with you if this conversion of Hindu and Christian girls into Islam is the only issue, or else are there Christian missionary elements as well that are playing?
Yeah, Christian missionaries do try to convert Muslims, Pura Muslims, and that is the active point that the Muslim Satya Sarani, that group makes, that Christian missionaries are going around converting poor Muslims to Christianity. So that element is there. And there are obviously other issues like the scholarship allocation, the minority ministry, the veto, the power that Muslim businessmen hold, etc., etc. Coming back to the Kashmir Kerala point, I just wanted to make one more point that we did make, me and Ravi Shankar, that we made in our podcast with him, which is that Malayalis are at the end of the day patriotic, right? We are patriotic. We do take a lot of pride in achievements of the country. A lot of elements of Kashmiri society might identify themselves with Pakistan.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist in Kerala. Muslims in Kerala, they don't have that identification. Muslims in Kerala don't have that identification with Pakistan. They have this identification with Gulf countries, right? With Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Bahrain or any other country.
As in, like, at least Pakistan, I mean, the argument that Kashmiris might give is that we wanted plebiscite, or we were
nothing of that.
Given, like, we were promised a separate state or stuff like that. But what argument do...
There is no... that's what I'm saying. There's no historical discourse over making itself a separate state even. There's been some elements of the Muslim League that have been talking about that. That's just to make their leader the chief minister, which is that's it. Like, there is no separatism that way. At least explicitly so, there is no such this thing. The more and more political elites in Kerala feel that they are not included in the mainstream, this sort of separatism might arise, but not the sort of that we see in, say, Kashmir, right? It's going to be very different. It's going to be very much about this beef, culture like, and Malayalis are superior to everyone else. The sort of discourse you see on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And Malayalis will... I mean, somebody was making a joke about the INDIA political bloc. Their campaign committee, apparently 33% of that is Malayalis, by the way.
Wow.
From Malayali, CPM, All India Forward Bloc, CPI, Kerala Congress Mani, all of them are Malayali parties, Kerala parties, right? So eventually Kerala, and KC Vedugopal, who's the General Secretary organization of Congress, who's apparently the linchpin for a lot of these ideas, he's a Malayali, right? Going forward, Malayalis are going to be the opposition. Right? Whatever this thing is, Malayalis are going to be at the forefront of the opposition. Even Rahul Gandhi is technically in a comfort Malayali, MP from Wayanad.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he is, man.
So I think going forward, that is going to be Malayali's job, national opposition.
Yeah. And promoting beef.
Promoting beef eating, yes.
Okay, quite a downfall
quite a downfall for a
from
society
Adi Shankaracharya till to...
This is another interesting point, by the way. We don't care about Adi Shankaracharya.
Wow.
We have no notion that Adi Shankaracharya is a great philosopher, a great leader, nothing of that sort. Adi Shankaracharya is more popular outside the state than inside the state. For us, our great leaders are our communist leaders and our Congress leaders and stuff like that. We have no recognition of Adi Shankaracharya.
And Mohanlal, sir.
Mohanlal, Mammootty, Laletan.
Yeah.
I am a fan of both of them. So
Cool. All right, I think we've covered all the points, man. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. I hope I didn't bore you.
I hope I didn't bore you. And
No, man, it was a really great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.